The smell of whiskey and tobacco still clung to her dress as Adelaide Keating stumbled through the darkness, her bare feet bleeding on the rocky terrain of the Arizona desert. She had waited until her father passed out cold before slipping through the window of their ramshackle house on the outskirts of Mineral Park, taking nothing but the clothes on her back and the desperate hope that anywhere would be better than the hell she was leaving behind. It was June of 1882, and the night air offered little relief from the day's oppressive heat. Adelaide's dark hair stuck to her neck with sweat as she ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, somewhere in the darkness, she could hear shouting. He had woken up. Her father had discovered her gone, and she knew what would happen if he caught her. The bruises on her arms and ribs throbbed with each step, reminders of what happened the last time she had tried to defy him. The moon hung low and full over the desert landscape, casting long shadows across the scrub brush and cacti. Adelaide had no plan beyond getting as far from her father as possible. She had turned 18 just 2 months ago, but her father treated her like his property, his servant, his target for every drunken rage. Her mother had died 3 years past from fever, and without her buffer, Adelaide's life had become unbearable. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing behind a large boulder about 3 miles from town. Her lungs burned and her feet left bloody prints on the dusty ground. In the distance, she could still hear her father's voice calling her name, the sound carrying across the empty landscape. Adelaide pressed herself against the rock, trying to make herself invisible, praying he would give up and go back. The sound of a horse's hooves made her freeze. Someone was coming down the trail, moving at an easy pace. Adelaide held her breath, not knowing if this stranger would be her salvation or another nightmare. The rider came into view, silhouetted against the moonlight, a tall figure on a paint horse with distinctive markings. "Easy now," a man's voice called out, deep and calm. "I heard someone running out here. You hurt?" Adelaide remained silent, pressing harder against the rock. She had learned not to trust men, especially strangers in the night. The rider dismounted, and she could hear his boots crunching on the gravel. "Listen, I am not going to hurt you. My name is Daniel Easton. I work the cattle ranch about 5 miles north of here. I was heading back from town when I heard all the commotion." "Go away," Adelaide managed to choke out, her voice hoarse from running. Daniel paused. "That your pa back there screaming his head off?" She did not answer, but her silence told him everything he needed to know. "He sounds meaner than a rattlesnake," Daniel continued, his voice gentle despite the observation. "And you sound scared half to death. Now, I can leave you here if that is what you want, but from the sound of things, he is getting closer, and those feet of yours are leaving a blood trail a blind man could follow." Adelaide's heart sank. She had not thought about that. She looked down at her torn feet, barely visible in the moonlight, and knew he was right. "Please," she whispered, finally letting desperation override her fear. "Please do not let him find me." Daniel moved around the boulder, and Adelaide got her first real look at him. He was young, maybe 23 or 24, with a strong jaw and kind eyes that reflected the moonlight. He wore typical ranch clothes, dusty from a day's work, and carried himself with a quiet confidence. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes." "Then come on. We need to move fast." He helped her to her feet, and Adelaide winced as her weight came down on her injured soles. Without a word, Daniel swept her up into his arms and carried her to his horse. The paint mare snorted softly but stood steady as he lifted Adelaide into the saddle before swinging up behind her. "Hold on tight," he said, wrapping one arm around her waist to steady her. "We are going to take a roundabout way through the creek bed to hide our tracks. Your pa will not find you, I promise you that." True to his word, Daniel guided the horse down into a shallow creek, the water cool and soothing on Adelaide's battered feet as they dangled near the surface. They rode for what felt like hours, taking a winding path that doubled back on itself several times. All the while, Adelaide's father's voice grew more distant until finally she could not hear it at all. "He will go to the sheriff," Adelaide said quietly. "He will tell them I ran away." "The sheriff in Mineral Park is Tom Bishop," Daniel replied. "Good man, known him since I was a boy." "If your pa is who I think he is, then Tom already knows what kind of man he is. Half the town does. You know my father, Cyrus Keating, saw him in the saloon today, drunk as usual, bragging about how he kept his daughter in line. Made me sick to my stomach." Daniel's voice hardened. No man should talk about his child that way. Adelaide felt tears sting her eyes. She had been so isolated, so convinced that no one cared or noticed her suffering. To know that someone had seen, that someone had been bothered by it, cracked something open inside her. They rode in silence for a while longer, until they came upon a small ranch nestled in a valley. A simple two-story house stood alongside a barn and several outbuildings, all well-maintained despite their humble appearance. A few cattle dozed in a nearby pen, and a dog barked once before recognizing Daniel and wagging its tail instead. "This is my place," Daniel said, dismounting before helping Adelaide down. "It's not much, but it's honest work and peaceful. You'll be safe here." The moment Adelaide's feet touched the ground, her legs buckled. Daniel caught her easily, then without asking, lifted her again and carried her toward the house. The door was unlocked, and he pushed it open with his shoulder, bringing her into a simple but clean main room. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and handmade furniture filled the space with practical comfort. Daniel set her gently on a chair near the fireplace and lit a lamp. In the warm glow, Adelaide could see him clearly for the first time. He had brown hair that curled slightly at the ends, sun-bronzed skin, and eyes the color of aged whiskey. There was a gentleness to his features that contradicted his strong build. "Let me see those feet," he said, kneeling before her. Adelaide hesitated, then slowly lifted one foot. Daniel examined it carefully, his touch surprisingly gentle for such rough hands. The soles were torn and bloody from running over sharp rocks and thorny plants. "I am going to need to clean these up and bandage them," he said. "It is going to hurt, but if we do not tend to them proper, they could get infected. You understand?" Adelaide nodded, steeling herself. Daniel disappeared into another room and returned with a basin of water, clean cloths, and what looked like medical supplies. He worked methodically, cleaning each wound with careful attention. Adelaide bit her lip to keep from crying out, gripping the arms of the chair so hard her knuckles turned white. "You are doing real good," Daniel encouraged her softly. "Almost done with this one. Why are you helping me?" Adelaide asked through gritted teeth. "You do not even know me." Daniel paused in his work, looking up at her with those steady eyes. "My ma used to say that the measure of a person is not in what they do when everyone is watching, but what they do when no one would ever know. Besides, I do know you in a way. I know what it is like to feel trapped and scared. Your father, no, my pa died when I was young. Good man, worked himself to death trying to build this ranch. But I had an uncle who came to help my ma after. He was not a good man. Made our lives hell for 2 years before he finally moved on. I was too young to stop him then, but I am not too young now." Something in his voice told Adelaide there was more to the story, but she did not press. They were both survivors of something, and that created an understanding between them that needed no further words. After tending to her feet, Daniel brought her bread, cheese, and cool water from the well. Adelaide devoured the simple meal, realizing she had not eaten since morning. Daniel watched her with concern, noting how thin she was, how the dress hung loose on her frame. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said when she finished eating. "I've got a spare room upstairs. It was my sister's before she married and moved to Tucson. The bed is good and you will have privacy." "I cannot pay you," Adelaide admitted, shame coloring her cheeks. "I am not asking for payment, I am offering help. But people will talk. A young woman staying with a bachelor," Daniel shrugged. "Let them talk. Anyone who knows me knows I would not dishonor a woman. And anyone who matters will understand you needed help." He showed her upstairs to a small room with a bed covered in a simple quilt, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the valley. After Daniel left, Adelaide collapsed onto the bed, and for the first time in years, she felt something like safety. She wept into the pillow, releasing years of fear and pain until exhaustion finally pulled her into a deep, dreamless sleep. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For a moment, Adelaide panicked, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory returned, and with it, the reality of what she had done. She had run away. She was free of her father, but she was also completely dependent on the kindness of a stranger. Adelaide's feet throbbed as she carefully made her way downstairs, using the railing for support. Daniel was in the kitchen, cooking eggs and bacon on a cast-iron stove. He turned when he heard her, a smile crossing his face. "Morning, how did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Adelaide admitted. "Thank you for everything." "Sit down before you fall down, those feet need more rest." Over breakfast, Daniel laid out his thoughts. "I have been thinking about your situation. Your pa is probably raising hell in town right now, claiming you stole from him or some other nonsense to get the law on his side. We need to get ahead of that." "How?" "I am going to ride into town and talk to Sheriff Bishop. Tom is a fair man and he will listen. I will tell him the truth, that you are of age and left because you were being hurt. He will understand." "What if he makes me go back?" "He would not. Not if you tell him what your pa has been doing." "But Adelaide, you are going to need to be brave and tell the truth. Can you do that?" Adelaide thought about the bruises still yellowing on her arms, the memories of worse things. She thought about spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, or worse, being dragged back to that house. Then she looked at Daniel, at the honest concern in his eyes, and found her courage. "Yes, I can do that." Daniel nodded approvingly. "Good. I will go this morning. You rest here, stay inside, and do not open the door for anyone but me. I will be back before supper." After he left, Adelaide explored the house more thoroughly. It was a bachelor's home, but surprisingly tidy. Books lined a shelf in the main room, everything from agricultural guides to poetry. The kitchen was well stocked, and through the windows, she could see the land stretching out in all directions. It was beautiful in a harsh way, this Arizona territory, all red rock and endless sky. She found some of Daniel's sister's old clothes in the dresser upstairs. They were a bit loose, but far better than her torn dress. Adelaide changed carefully, mindful of her injuries, and felt more human in the clean cotton garment. The day passed slowly. Adelaide's feet forced her to stay relatively still, so she occupied herself by tidying the kitchen and reading one of Daniel's books, a collection of Walt Whitman poems that surprised her. She had not expected a cowboy to own such things. True to his word, Daniel returned before supper, accompanied by another man. Adelaide tensed when she heard the horses, but Daniel called out as he entered. "Adelaide, Sheriff Bishop is with me. He wants to hear your story." The sheriff was a man in his 50s with gray threading through his dark hair and a weathered face that spoke of years under the desert sun. His eyes were kind but sharp, missing nothing as he entered the house and removed his hat respectfully. "Miss Keating," he greeted her. "Daniel here has told me some concerning things. I would like to hear your side if you are willing." Adelaide's hands trembled as she sat down, but she forced herself to speak. She told him everything: the drinking, the beatings, the way her father's rage had grown worse after her mother died. She showed him the bruises, still visible despite beginning to fade. She spoke of the fear that had become her constant companion, the hopelessness of believing there was no escape. Sheriff Bishop listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your pa came to see me this morning just like Daniel predicted. Said you ran off with money you stole from him. I did not believe him then, and I certainly do not believe him now." He leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Miss Keating, you are 18 years old, which makes you an adult in the eyes of the law. You have every right to live where you choose. I will make it clear to your father that if he comes near you or tries to force you back, he will be the one answering to the law. Do you understand? You are free." The word hung in the air like a bell that had been rung. Free. Adelaide had not dared to believe it could be so simple, but looking at the sheriff's honest face, she realized it was true. "Thank you," she whispered. After the sheriff left, Daniel set about making supper. Adelaide insisted on helping, despite his protests, and they moved around the kitchen together in an awkward but companionable dance. Daniel had shot a rabbit that morning, and Adelaide made a stew with vegetables from his garden, discovering that cooking in peace was vastly different from cooking in fear. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Daniel would wake before dawn to tend to his cattle and horses, while Adelaide would manage the house. Her feet healed quickly under Daniel's careful treatment, and soon she was able to move about without pain. She threw herself into making his home more comfortable, not because she felt obligated, but because she genuinely wanted to contribute. Daniel was unlike any man she had ever known. He was patient and kind, never raising his voice, always asking rather than demanding. He treated her like an equal, seeking her opinion on matters ranging from what to plant in the garden to whether he should invest in more cattle. Slowly, Adelaide began to relax, to believe that this safety was not an illusion that would shatter at any moment. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daniel whittled a piece of wood while Adelaide mended one of his shirts, the domestic scene feeling surprisingly natural. "Daniel," Adelaide said quietly, "what happens when people start talking about me being here?" He did not look up from his whittling. "They already are talking. Mrs. Henderson from the general store stopped me yesterday to express her concerns about the impropriety of it all." Adelaide's heart sank. "Maybe I should go." "I do not want to ruin your reputation." "You are not going anywhere," Daniel said firmly. "My reputation can survive some gossip. Besides, I have a solution if you are willing to hear it." "What kind of solution?" Daniel finally looked at her, and Adelaide was struck by the intensity in his eyes. "We could get married." Adelaide's needle slipped, pricking her finger. She stared at him in shock. "What? Hear me out," Daniel said, setting down his whittling. "I know we have not known each other long, but I like having you here, Adelaide. You make this house feel like a home instead of just a place to sleep. And I think, maybe, you are starting to feel comfortable here too. If we got married, no one could say a word about you staying. You would have the protection of my name, and your pa could not ever claim any rights to you again." "But you do not love me," Adelaide said, her voice barely audible. "I care about you," Daniel replied honestly. "And I respect you. Maybe that is a better foundation than love anyway. Love can be fickle, but respect endures." Adelaide thought about his offer. It was practical, sensible even. She did care for Daniel, felt safe with him in a way she had never felt with anyone. But the idea of marriage without love felt like settling, like accepting less than what life could offer. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. There is no rush, Adelaide. The offer stands whenever you are ready, or not at all if that is what you decide." That night, Adelaide lay awake thinking about Daniel's proposal. Part of her wanted to accept immediately to secure her safety through the legal bond of marriage. But another part, a part that was just beginning to emerge from years of trauma, wanted more. She wanted to know what it felt like to choose something for herself, not out of fear or necessity, but out of genuine desire. The next morning, Adelaide woke to find Daniel already gone to check on his herd. She made breakfast and was cleaning up when someone knocked on the door. Her heart jumped into her throat, old fear making her freeze. But then a woman's voice called out, "Hello, is anyone home?" "I am Sarah Bishop, the sheriff's wife." Adelaide opened the door to find a plump, cheerful woman in her 50s holding a basket covered with a checkered cloth. Sarah's face lit up when she saw Adelaide. "You must be Adelaide. I have been wanting to meet you. May I come in?" Bemused, Adelaide stepped aside. Sarah bustled in, setting her basket on the table and immediately making herself at home. "I brought you some bread and preserves and a pie. Apple. It is Tom's favorite, but I thought you and Daniel might enjoy it too." She turned to Adelaide with a warm smile. "I also wanted to check on you, dear. Tom told me about your situation, and I wanted you to know that if you ever need anything, anything at all, you can come to me." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected kindness. "Thank you, Mrs. Bishop. Call me Sarah, please." "Now, how are you settling in? Is Daniel treating you well?" "He has been nothing but kind," Adelaide assured her. "I do not know what I would have done without him." Sarah nodded knowingly. "That boy has always had a good heart. His mother would be proud of the man he became." "But I imagine people have been talking, have they not?" Adelaide hesitated, then nodded. "I thought so. Small towns are like that, I'm afraid. Everyone thinks they have a right to everyone else's business." Sarah patted Adelaide's hand. "Do not let them chase you off. You have as much right to happiness and safety as anyone." They talked for over an hour, and Adelaide found herself relaxing in Sarah's motherly presence. She learned that Sarah and Tom had no children of their own, that Sarah ran a small seamstress business from their home, and that she had known Daniel since he was a boy. "He was always quiet," Sarah mused, "but good. Used to help the older folks in town with their chores, never asking for anything in return. When his uncle was making life hard for him and his mother, Tom wanted to step in, but there was not much we could do legally. The man had not broken any laws, just been cruel in ways that do not leave marks." "Daniel told me a little about that," Adelaide said. "Did he tell you what he did when he turned 18? "He stood up to his uncle, told him to leave and never come back. The uncle tried to fight him, but Daniel was younger and stronger. He gave that man a choice, leave on his own or be carried out. The uncle left." Sarah's eyes shone with approval. "That is when I knew Daniel would be all right. He found his backbone." "He is the bravest person I know," Adelaide said quietly. Sarah gave her a knowing look. "That sounds like more than gratitude talking." Adelaide blushed. "I do not know what I feel. Everything is so confused. He asked me to marry him." "And what did you say?" "That I needed to think about it." "Sarah, how do you know if you love someone? Real love, not just feeling safe or grateful." Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering. "Love is different for everyone, I think. But for me, it was when I realized I wanted to share everything with Tom. Not just the house or the bed, but my thoughts, my dreams, my fears. When keeping something from him felt wrong, like hiding part of myself. When his happiness mattered as much as my own." She squeezed Adelaide's hand. "Give yourself time, dear. You have been through a terrible ordeal. Your heart needs time to heal before it can truly open to someone new." After Sarah left, Adelaide thought about her words. She realized that she was already beginning to share things with Daniel, small pieces of herself that she had kept locked away. She told him about her mother, about the dreams she had harbored of becoming a teacher someday, about her love of reading. And he listened, really listened, sharing his own dreams in return. Summer deepened into its full heat, and Adelaide grew stronger both physically and emotionally. She began helping Daniel with the ranch work, learning to feed the chickens, gather eggs, and tend the vegetable garden. The work was hard but satisfying, and she took pride in watching things grow under her care. Daniel taught her to ride properly, putting her on a gentle mare named Bess. At first, Adelaide was terrified, but Daniel's patient instruction and steady presence gave her courage. Soon, she was riding out with him to check on the cattle, marveling at the vast landscape that had once seemed so threatening but now felt like freedom. One day in late July, they were riding back from the far pasture when they spotted a rider approaching the ranch. Adelaide tensed, but Daniel put a reassuring hand on her arm. "It is just Pete, my neighbor from the next ranch over. Good man." Pete turned out to be a grizzled cowboy in his 60s who had known Daniel's father. He tipped his hat to Adelaide with old-fashioned courtesy and launched into a discussion with Daniel about water rights and cattle prices. Adelaide excused herself to start supper, but she felt warmed by how naturally Pete accepted her presence, asking her opinion on whether the summer had been unusually dry. These small acceptances added up. The clerk at the general store started greeting her by name. Families at church nodded to her and Daniel where they sat together. Slowly, Adelaide stopped being the girl who ran away and became simply Adelaide, Daniel's friend. Daniel's maybe more than friend. It was during a thunderstorm in early August that everything changed. The storm rolled in fast and violent, as they often did in the Arizona desert. Daniel was in the barn securing the animals, and Adelaide was closing the shutters when she saw him running back toward the house. But he stopped halfway, looking toward the road. Adelaide followed his gaze and felt her blood run cold. A figure on horseback was approaching, hunched against the rain. Even from this distance, even after 2 months, she recognized her father's silhouette. Daniel saw her face in the window and immediately changed direction, putting himself between the house and the approaching rider. Adelaide ran outside, heedless of the rain. "Get back inside," Daniel called to her, but she did not listen. Cyrus Keating rode right up to them, swaying in his saddle. He was drunk. Adelaide could tell, drunk and mean. Her father's face was red with rage and alcohol, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "There you are, you ungrateful wretch," he snarled at Adelaide. "Thought you could just run off, thought you could shame me in front of the whole town." "She is not going anywhere with you," Daniel said, his voice calm but steel hard. "Get off my property. This is my daughter, my property. I have got every right to take her home. She is 18 years old and a free woman. You have got no rights to her at all." Cyrus tried to dismount but nearly fell, catching himself on the saddle. Daniel did not move, standing solid as a rock between Cyrus and Adelaide. "I will have the law on you," Cyrus threatened. "Kidnapping, that is what this is. Go ahead, talk to Sheriff Bishop, see what he says." Daniel's voice dropped lower. "Or better yet, ask him why he has not arrested you yet for what you did to your own daughter. Ask him how close he came to throwing you in jail for beating a woman." Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating Cyrus's face twisted with impotent rage. He looked past Daniel to Adelaide, and she saw something in his eyes that chilled her, a complete lack of recognition of her as a person. To him, she was still just a thing, something he owned. "You will regret this," Cyrus spat. Both of you. The only thing I regret is not getting Adelaide out of your house sooner, Daniel replied. Now get out of here before I make you leave. Something in Daniel's stance must have convinced Cyrus he was serious. With a final string of curses, Adelaide's father hauled himself back into the saddle and rode off into the storm. Adelaide realized she was shaking, her breath coming in gasps. Daniel turned to her, his expression softening immediately. "Are you all right?" "I thought he was going to hurt you," Adelaide said. "I thought he was going to hurt both of us." "He is just a drunk old man full of hot air," Daniel said, though Adelaide could see tension in his jaw. "Come on, let us get you inside before you catch your death." Inside, Daniel built up the fire while Adelaide changed into dry clothes. When she came back downstairs, he handed her a cup of hot coffee laced with a bit of whiskey. "To stop the shaking," he explained. They sat by the fire, listening to the storm rage outside. Adelaide could not stop replaying the scene, seeing her father's face, feeling that old terror resurface. "He will not stop," she said quietly. "He will keep coming back, keep trying to make my life miserable. That is who he is." "Then we will deal with it every time," Daniel said firmly. "Adelaide, you do not ever have to face him alone again. I promise you that." She looked at him, really looked at him. At his strong, honest face, at the concern in his eyes that was only for her, at the way he had stood between her and danger without hesitation. And something shifted inside her, clicking into place like a key in a lock. "Ask me again," she said softly. "Ask you what? To marry you? Ask me again." Daniel set down his coffee slowly, turning to face her fully. "Adelaide Keating, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Adelaide said, and felt the rightness of it resonate through her bones. "Yes, Daniel, I will marry you." He smiled then, a real smile that lit up his whole face, and Adelaide realized she had never seen him look so happy. He took her hand, holding it gently like it was something precious. "I will do everything in my power to make you happy," he promised. "I will be a good husband to you, Adelaide, I swear it." "I know you will," she said. "And I will be a good wife to you. I want to be, Daniel, not because I owe you, but because I want to share my life with you." They sat there by the fire, hands joined, while the storm raged outside and something new and fragile and precious grew between them. The next morning, Daniel rode to town and returned with Sarah Bishop and her husband. Sarah took Adelaide aside, her eyes twinkling. "Tom says you are getting married. He is going to perform the ceremony since he is authorized as a judge. But first, we need to get you a proper dress. No getting married in ranch clothes." Over the next 3 days, Sarah worked magic with needle and thread, creating a simple but beautiful dress in cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Adelaide watched her work, marveling at the care she took. "You do not have to go to all this trouble," Adelaide protested. "Nonsense. Every bride deserves to feel special on her wedding day." Sarah looked at her seriously. "Are you sure about this, dear? I know Daniel is a good man, but marriage is a big step." "I am sure," Adelaide said, and realized she meant it. "I love him, Sarah." "I did not realize it until I saw my father again, saw Daniel stand up for me without hesitation. But I love him." Sarah beamed. "I hoped you would figure that out. That boy has been half in love with you since he brought you home." "He has. Could not you tell? The way he looks at you when you are not watching, like you are the sunrise and sunset all rolled into one. Men like Daniel do not know how to hide their feelings very well. They wear them plain on their faces." Adelaide thought about all the small kindnesses Daniel had shown her, the way he always made sure she was comfortable, the way he asked her opinion on things, the way he smiled when she laughed. Sarah was right. The signs had been there all along. On a Sunday afternoon in mid-August, Adelaide and Daniel stood in the main room of his ranch house, and spoke their vows before Sheriff Bishop, Sarah, and Pete as witnesses. Adelaide wore her new dress with wildflowers in her hair that Daniel had picked that morning. Daniel wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair still damp from scrubbing up. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When Daniel placed a simple gold band on her finger, a ring that had been his grandmother's, Adelaide felt tears slip down her cheeks. Not tears of sadness, but of joy, of relief, of gratitude for this second chance at life. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Sheriff Bishop said with a smile. "Daniel, you may kiss your bride." Daniel cupped Adelaide's face gently in his hands and kissed her softly, sweetly. A kiss full of promise and hope. When they parted, Adelaide saw tears in his eyes too. Sarah had prepared a feast, and they all ate and drank and celebrated late into the evening. Pete played a fiddle Adelaide had not known he owned, and Daniel taught her to dance, laughing as they stumbled through the steps together. After everyone left, Daniel and Adelaide stood on the porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Adelaide leaned against her husband, feeling the solid warmth of him, and felt peace settle over her like a blessing. "Are you happy?" Daniel asked quietly. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Adelaide replied honestly. She turned to face him. "Daniel, I need you to know something. I am not marrying you out of gratitude or obligation. I love you. I truly do." His face transformed with joy. "I love you too, Adelaide. Have since the night I found you hiding behind that boulder, brave and terrified and determined to survive. I looked at you and thought, this is a woman worth knowing." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Adelaide felt heat bloom through her body. Daniel pulled back, searching her face. "We can take this slow," he said. "I do not want you to feel pressured into anything. We have got all the time in the world." Adelaide appreciated his consideration, but she found she did not want to wait. This man was her husband, her choice, her future. She took his hand and led him upstairs, her heart pounding but her mind clear. This was what she wanted. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Daniel's patience and care dissolving Adelaide's nervousness until there was only joy and intimacy and connection. Afterwards, she lay in his arms feeling cherished and whole in a way she had never experienced before. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Adelaide's life. She and Daniel fell into married life with surprising ease, working the ranch together during the day and spending their evenings reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. Adelaide discovered that marriage to a good man was nothing like the cold transaction she had witnessed between her parents. This was partnership, friendship, and love all woven together. In September, Adelaide rode into town with Daniel to buy supplies. She noticed people staring and whispering, but the whispers seemed different now. She was Mrs. Easton, a married woman, respectable. Mrs. Henderson at the general store congratulated them warmly, and several other women Adelaide barely knew stopped to offer their good wishes. As they loaded supplies into the wagon, a woman approached them. She was about Adelaide's age, pretty, with blonde hair and a stylish dress that spoke of money. She smiled at Daniel with a familiarity that made Adelaide's stomach tighten. "Daniel Easton, as I live and breathe. I heard you went and got yourself married." The woman's eyes slid to Adelaide, assessment clear in her gaze. "This must be your bride." "Hello, Catherine," Daniel said, his tone carefully neutral. "Yes, this is my wife, Adelaide. Adelaide, this is Catherine Morgan. Her family owns the big spread west of town." "Pleased to meet you," Adelaide said, extending her hand. Catherine shook it limply. "How unexpected. I always thought when Daniel settled down it would be with someone we all knew, someone from a good family." Her smile was sharp. "But I suppose love strikes where it will." Adelaide is from a good family, Daniel said, his voice hard. And even if she was not, I would not care. She is the best woman I have ever known. Catherine's smile faltered. Of course, I meant no offense. Well, I should be going. Congratulations to you both. As she walked away, Adelaide felt Daniel's hand find hers and squeeze. Do not let her get to you, he said. Catherine and I courted briefly a few years back. It did not work out, and she has been bitter about it ever since. You courted her. Adelaide tried to keep the jealousy out of her voice. For about 2 months, she wanted a husband who would live in town and be part of her social circle. I wanted to work my ranch and live quiet. We were not suited. He turned Adelaide to face him. But you and I, we fit just right. That night, as they lay in bed, Adelaide worked up the courage to ask something that had been on her mind. Daniel, do you ever regret it? Marrying me so quickly? You could have had your pick of women, someone like Catherine from a wealthy family. Daniel propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her in the moonlight streaming through the window. Adelaide Easton, I have never regretted a single moment since the day I found you. You are strong and brave and kind. You work harder than anyone I know. You make me laugh. You make this house feel like a home. Why would I regret finding the other half of my soul, the other half of your soul? Adelaide repeated softly. That is what you are, Daniel said simply. I feel more myself with you than I ever have with anyone else. That is how I know this was right. Adelaide pulled him down for a kiss, pouring all her love and gratitude and joy into it. They made love slowly, sweetly, learning each other's bodies and hearts with growing confidence and intimacy. As autumn painted the landscape in shades of gold and rust, Adelaide found a new rhythm to her life. She befriended several of the ranch wives in the area, women who taught her to can vegetables, churn butter, and manage a household through the changing seasons. Sarah Bishop became like the mother Adelaide had lost, offering advice and companionship. Daniel taught her to shoot, insisting she know how to protect herself and the ranch when he was away checking on distant pastures. Adelaide proved to be a quick study, her steady hands and sharp eye making her a decent shot. Daniel beamed with pride the first time she hit the target dead center. One evening in late October, Adelaide realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another week, not wanting to get her hopes up, but when the signs continued, she could no longer deny the truth. She was pregnant. She waited until after supper to tell Daniel, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. They were sitting on the porch wrapped in blankets against the evening chill when she finally worked up the courage. Daniel, I have something to tell you. He looked at her, immediately attentive. What is it? Are you all right? I am more than all right. Adelaide took his hand and placed it over her still flat stomach. We are going to have a baby. For a moment, Daniel just stared at her, processing. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He let out a whoop of joy and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around before setting her down carefully as if she were made of glass. A baby, he breathed. We are going to have a baby. Adelaide, you have made me the happiest man alive. You are happy about it. I know we have only been married a few months. Happy, I am over the moon, he kissed her soundly. How are you feeling? Do we need to get the doctor? Adelaide laughed at his sudden torrent of questions. Probably late spring, around May. I feel fine, just a little tired. And we do not need the doctor yet, but Sarah will know what to do. True to Adelaide's prediction, Sarah was thrilled and immediately began organizing. She brought over books on pregnancy and childbirth, gave Adelaide advice on what to eat and how much to rest, and generally fussed over her like a mother hen. Adelaide did not mind. After years of having no one care about her well-being, the attention felt like love. Winter came to the Arizona territory, not with snow but with cold winds and occasional rain. Adelaide continued to work the ranch as much as she could, though Daniel increasingly insisted she take it easy. They spent the long evenings planning for the baby, discussing names and dreams for their child's future. "I want our children to have choices," Adelaide said one night as they lay in bed, Daniel's hand resting protectively over her growing belly. "I want them to know they can be anything they want to be, do anything they want to do." "They will," Daniel promised. "We will make sure of it." In December, Adelaide and Daniel made the journey into Mineral Park for Christmas services. The church was decorated with pine boughs and candles, and the community gathered to celebrate together. Adelaide felt a surge of emotion as she looked around at these people who had become her neighbors, her friends. This was her home now, her community. After the service, Catherine Morgan approached them again, but this time her expression was different, less calculating and more genuine. "I owe you both an apology," she said. "I was not kind when we met, and I am sorry for that. I let my own disappointment make me mean." She looked at Adelaide. "Daniel is lucky to have found you. Anyone can see how happy you make him." "Thank you," Adelaide said, surprised but touched. "That means a great deal." Catherine smiled, a real smile this time. "I hear congratulations are in order. You are expecting." "We are," Daniel said proudly, his arm around Adelaide's waist. "How wonderful. I hope you will bring the baby to visit when it arrives. I do so love children." As they rode home that night, Adelaide marveled at the change. "People can surprise you," she said to Daniel, "that they can." I think Catherine is finally letting go of the past and looking toward her own future. Tom mentioned she has been seeing the new banker in town. Good for her. Everyone deserves to be happy. January and February passed in a blur of preparation. Daniel built a cradle from oak wood, carving delicate patterns into the sides. Adelaide sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart swelling with love for the child she had not yet met. Her belly grew round and prominent, and she felt the baby move, small flutters that became stronger kicks as winter gave way to early spring. It was in March that Cyrus Keating made his final appearance in their lives. Adelaide was hanging laundry when she saw a figure on foot stumbling down the road toward the ranch. Her heart seized with recognition, but this time she did not feel fear. She called for Daniel, who came running from the barn. Cyrus looked terrible. He was thinner than Adelaide remembered, his clothes hanging loose, his face gray and sickly. He stopped at the edge of the property, swaying on his feet. "Adelaide," he called out, his voice weak, "please, I need to talk to you." Daniel moved to stand beside her. "Do you want me to send him away?" Adelaide looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw a broken man. The rage that had defined him seemed to have burned out, leaving only a husk behind. She felt pity, not for what he had been, but for what he had wasted his life becoming. "No," she said quietly. "Let him speak." They approached cautiously. Up close, Adelaide could see that her father was ill, really ill. His skin had a yellowish tint and his hands shook. "I am dying," Cyrus said without preamble. "Liver is shot. Doctor says I have got maybe a month left." He looked at Adelaide with eyes that were suddenly, shockingly clear. "I came to say I am sorry, for everything. I know it does not change nothing, but I needed you to know I was a terrible father. You deserved better." Adelaide felt tears sting her eyes, not for him, but for the little girl she had been who had so desperately wanted her father's love. "Why?" she asked. "Why were you so cruel?" "I was angry," Cyrus said simply. "Angry at the world, at God, at myself for all the ways my life did not turn out like I planned. And I took it out on the people who could not fight back. Your ma and then you. There is no excuse for it. I was wrong." He looked at her belly, noting the clear signs of pregnancy. "You are going to have a baby." "Yes. I hope you are happy. I hope that child never knows the kind of fear you lived with." He turned to Daniel. "Take care of her. She deserves all the happiness in the world." "I intend to," Daniel said firmly. Cyrus nodded slowly. "I will go now. I needed to say my piece. Goodbye, Adelaide." He turned and began walking back down the road, his gait unsteady. Adelaide watched him go, feeling a strange sense of closure. She had not forgiven him, might never fully forgive him, but his apology had acknowledged her pain in a way that mattered. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, pulling her close. "I think I am," Adelaide said. "He does not have power over me anymore. He is just a sad old man dying alone because of the choices he made. I have moved past him." "You are stronger than anyone I know," Daniel said, pressing a kiss to her temple. 3 weeks later, Sheriff Bishop came to tell them that Cyrus had passed away in his sleep. He had been found in his small shack, a bottle beside him, no one to mourn his passing. Adelaide felt sadness for the wasted life, but also relief. That chapter was finally, truly closed. April brought warm winds and the first wildflowers blooming across the desert. Adelaide was enormous now, her belly so large she could barely see her feet. Daniel fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest, bringing her water and snacks, rubbing her swollen ankles in the evening. "I am not made of china," Adelaide protested one afternoon. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my women," Daniel said stubbornly. "Not my wife carrying my child. You are precious, Adelaide, and I intend to treat you that way." On a warm evening in early May, Adelaide's pains began. They started as a dull ache in her lower back and gradually intensified. Sarah had been staying with them for the past week in anticipation, and she immediately took charge, sending Daniel to fetch the doctor while she helped Adelaide upstairs. The labor was long and difficult. Adelaide labored through the night and into the next day, Sarah and the doctor coaching her through each contraction. Daniel paced downstairs, then in the hallway, then finally Sarah let him in to hold Adelaide's hand. "You are doing so well," he murmured to her, wiping the sweat from her face. "You are so strong, so brave. I love you so much." Adelaide gripped his hand hard through another contraction, feeling like she was being torn apart. But she focused on Daniel's face, on his love and support, and found the strength to push when the doctor told her it was time. Just as the sun was setting on the second day, filling the room with golden light, Adelaide gave a final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby crying. The doctor held up a squalling infant with a shock of dark hair. "It is a boy," he announced with a smile. "A healthy boy." Adelaide sobbed with relief and joy as Sarah cleaned the baby and placed him in her arms. He was perfect, tiny and red-faced and furious at being born. Adelaide looked down at her son and felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it took her breath away. Daniel was crying openly, staring at his son with wonder. "He is beautiful," he whispered. "Adelaide, you are amazing. Thank you for this gift." They named him Henry Thomas Easton, Henry for Daniel's father and Thomas for Sheriff Bishop, who had been so kind to them. Little Henry was a good baby, nursing well and sleeping in fits and starts like all newborns. Adelaide had never been so exhausted or so happy in her entire life. The first weeks were a blur of feeding and changing and learning to be parents. Daniel proved to be a natural father, gentle and patient with his son. He would walk the floor with Henry in the middle of the night, singing old cowboy songs in his deep voice until the baby settled. He changed diapers without complaint and looked at his son with such open adoration that Adelaide fell in love with him all over again. As spring turned to summer, Adelaide recovered her strength, and Henry grew chubby and alert. They settled into a new routine, balancing ranch work with caring for their son. Neighbors stopped by to meet the baby and offer congratulations. Sarah was a constant presence, teaching Adelaide all the tricks of motherhood she had learned from helping other women over the years. One evening in July, when Henry was about 2 months old, Adelaide and Daniel sat on the porch watching the sunset while their son slept in his cradle beside them. The air was warm and still, and the world felt perfect. "Can you believe it has been a year?" Adelaide said softly. "A year since I ran away." "Best decision you ever made," Daniel said, taking her hand. "No, the best decision I ever made was saying yes when you asked me to marry you." Adelaide looked at her husband, at the life they had built together. "I was so broken when you found me, Daniel. I did not think I could ever be whole again, but you did not try to fix me. You just loved me and gave me space to heal myself." "You were never broken," Daniel said firmly. "Hurt, yes, scared, absolutely, but never broken. You were always strong, Adelaide. You just needed a safe place to remember that." She leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, listening to the soft snuffles of their sleeping son. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you and Henry so much I cannot imagine life without you." "You will never have to," Daniel promised. "We are a family, Adelaide, and families stick together through everything." The years that followed were full and happy. Henry grew into a cheerful, energetic boy with his mother's dark hair and his father's kind eyes. When he was 2, Adelaide became pregnant again, and this time she gave birth to a daughter they named Emma Rose. Emma had blonde hair and blue eyes like Daniel's sister, and a sunny disposition that charmed everyone she met. The ranch prospered under Daniel's careful management and Adelaide's hard work. They expanded the herd, built a bigger barn, and eventually hired a young cowboy named Jack to help with the work. Adelaide started a small garden business, selling her vegetables and preserves in town, adding to the family income. Adelaide never forgot where she had come from, the fear and pain that had marked her early life. But instead of letting it embitter her, she used it to fuel her compassion for others. When she heard of women or children in difficult situations, she quietly offered help, providing food, shelter, or simply a listening ear. Sarah helped her organize a sort of informal network, Women Helping Women, and together they made a real difference in their community. Daniel supported all of Adelaide's endeavors, proud of the woman she had become. They had their struggles, of course. There were years when the cattle prices dropped, seasons of drought that tested their resilience, illnesses that scared them. But they faced everything together, their love deepening with each challenge overcome. When Henry was 6 and Emma 4, Adelaide gave birth to twin boys, Joseph and James. The house was suddenly full of noise and chaos and laughter, and Adelaide and Daniel could not have been happier. Raising 4 children while running a ranch was exhausting work, but it was good work, meaningful work. On a summer evening when the twins were about 3 months old, Adelaide stood in the doorway watching her family. Daniel was in the yard teaching Henry to rope a fence post while Emma picked wildflowers nearby. The twins slept peacefully in the cradle Daniel had made for Henry and used for each subsequent baby. The scene was so ordinary, so perfect, that Adelaide felt tears of gratitude slip down her cheeks. Sarah, who had stopped by with fresh bread, came to stand beside her. "Having a moment?" she asked kindly. "Just remembering," Adelaide said. "When I ran away that night, I thought I was running toward nothing. I just wanted to escape. I never imagined I could have this, a real family, a real home, love. You created this, Adelaide. You and Daniel together. You took your second chance and built something beautiful with it." Sarah hugged her. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you became." That night, after the children were all in bed and the house was finally quiet, Adelaide and Daniel sat together on the porch as they had so many evenings before. They were older now, Daniel's hair showing threads of gray, Adelaide's face marked with laugh lines. But the love between them had only grown stronger. "You remember the night we met?" Adelaide asked. "You said you would not let my father find me. I remember. I made you a promise." "You have kept every promise you ever made to me, Daniel Easton. You have been my protector, my partner, my friend, my love. You have given me a family and a home and a life I never dared to dream of." Adelaide took his hand, pressing it to her heart. "I want you to know that I would choose you again. Every day, every moment, I would choose you." Daniel's eyes shone in the starlight. "And I would choose you, Adelaide. From that first night to this moment to every day we have left, I choose you." They kissed, a kiss that held years of love and trust and partnership. When they parted, Daniel pulled something from his pocket, a small carved wooden bird. "I made this for you," he said. "It is a meadowlark. They migrate, you know, traveling great distances to find the right place to nest. I thought of you when I carved it, how you traveled through darkness to find your home." Adelaide took the delicate carving, marveling at the detail. "It is beautiful. You are my home, Adelaide. You always will be." Inside the house, one of the twins began to fuss and Emma called out in her sleep. Adelaide laughed softly, tucking the bird carefully into her pocket. "Our home is calling," she said. They went inside together, hand in hand, to tend to their children and their life. Adelaide paused in the doorway, looking back at the stars shining over the Arizona desert, the same stars that had watched her desperate flight so many years ago. But she was not that frightened girl anymore. She was Adelaide Easton, wife, mother, partner, survivor, victor. She was free. The years continued to flow like water over stone, shaping and smoothing their lives into something beautiful. Henry grew tall and strong, inheriting his father's skill with horses and cattle. Emma became a voracious reader like her mother, always with a book tucked under her arm. The twins, Joseph and James, were inseparable mischief makers who kept everyone on their toes. When Henry turned 13, Daniel began teaching him the full operation of the ranch, riding out with him to check fences and tend cattle. Adelaide watched them together and saw how Daniel poured all the fatherly love and guidance he had been denied into his son. He was patient with Henry's mistakes, firm with his discipline, and generous with his praise. He was everything a father should be. Emma proved to have her mother's compassionate heart. She noticed when people were struggling and always wanted to help. At 10 years old, she started teaching reading to some of the younger children in the area, using the skills Adelaide had taught her. Adelaide's old dream of being a teacher was living on through her daughter, and it filled her with pride. The twins, now 7, were finally starting to develop their own distinct personalities. Joseph was the dreamer, always drawing or building things from scraps of wood. James was practical and clever, figuring out solutions to problems with an engineer's mind. Daniel and Adelaide encouraged both boys, providing them with materials and opportunities to explore their interests. One spring morning, Adelaide woke to find Daniel already up, standing at the window looking out over their land. She joined him, slipping her arm around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just counting my blessings," Daniel said, pulling her close. 20 years ago, I was alone in this house, working myself to the bone with nothing but memories for company. Now look at this place. It is alive with family and love and purpose." He looked down at her. "You did that, Adelaide. You brought life to everything you touched." "We did it together," Adelaide corrected gently. "Neither of us could have built this life alone." Later that day, Sheriff Bishop, now deeply into his 70s but still sharp as ever, rode out to the ranch with news. He had decided to finally retire, and the town was looking for a new sheriff. He wanted to recommend Daniel for the position. Daniel was honored but conflicted. "I appreciate the faith you have in me, Tom, but my place is here on the ranch with my family." "The job would not take you away much," Tom argued. "Mineral Park is not exactly overflowing with crime. Mostly it's settling disputes and keeping the peace. You could handle it and still run your ranch." Adelaide listened to the discussion with interest. She knew Daniel had a strong sense of justice and duty, but she also knew how much he loved ranching. "What do you think?" Daniel asked her after Tom left. "I think you should do what feels right to you," Adelaide said, "but I will support whatever you decide." In the end, Daniel declined the sheriff position, recommending instead a younger man who had recently moved to the area. But the conversation sparked something in him. He started spending more time in town, helping mediate disputes between neighbors, offering advice to young ranchers just starting out. He became an unofficial leader in the community, someone people turned to when they needed wisdom or help. Adelaide expanded her own role as well. The informal network of women helping women had grown into something more organized. They pooled resources to help families in need, supported women leaving difficult situations, and created a genuine safety net for the most vulnerable in their community. It was the work Adelaide felt most passionate about, using her own experience to help others find their freedom. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised Adelaide with a trip to Tucson to visit his sister, Marion, and her family. It was the first time Adelaide had traveled more than a few miles from the ranch since her children were born, and she felt both excited and nervous about leaving them, even though Sarah and her oldest children were more than capable of managing for a few days. The journey was an adventure. They took the train, marveling at how the landscape changed from desert to grassland and back again. Tucson was much larger than Mineral Park, with paved streets and electric lights that had recently been installed. Adelaide found it overwhelming after years of quiet ranch life, but Daniel's sister welcomed them warmly. Marion was a cheerful woman who reminded Adelaide strongly of Daniel with her kind eyes and ready smile. She had 4 children of her own, now mostly grown, and ran a successful boarding house with her husband. "I always knew Daniel would be a good husband when he found the right woman," Marion said to Adelaide over tea while the men talked business. "He was such a serious boy after our father died, taking on so much responsibility so young. I am glad he found happiness with you." "He gave me a life when I had none," Adelaide said simply. "I love him more than words can express." The days in Tucson were lovely, filled with good food, interesting conversations, and the pleasure of being somewhere new together. But Adelaide found herself missing her children and the ranch with an intensity that surprised her. This was what home meant, she realized. Not a place, but the people you loved and the life you had built with them. On the train ride back, Daniel held Adelaide's hand and said, "Thank you for 20 years of happiness. Here is to 20 more and 20 after that." "And 20 after that," Adelaide agreed, kissing him softly. They arrived home to chaos. The twins had convinced Emma to help them build a fort in the barn, which had partially collapsed. Henry had discovered one of the cows was sick and spent the entire 3 days nursing it back to health. Sarah was exhausted but laughing about the adventure she had survived. Adelaide hugged each of her children, breathing in their familiar scents, feeling complete again. This was her life, messy and loud and full to bursting with love. She would not trade it for anything in the world. As the children grew older and more independent, Adelaide found herself with more time for reflection. She started writing down her story, not for publication, but for her children and grandchildren. She wanted them to know where she had come from, what she had survived, so they would understand the value of the life they had. She wrote about the fear and pain of her early years, but also about the courage it took to run. She wrote about Daniel finding her, about learning to trust again, about falling in love. She wrote about the joy of her children being born, the challenges of building a life together, the deep satisfaction of creating something good out of such darkness. Daniel read what she wrote and was moved to tears. "You should share this," he said. "Other women need to hear your story. They need to know they can survive and thrive." Adelaide was hesitant, but Sarah agreed with Daniel. So Adelaide began sharing parts of her story with the women's group, and the response was overwhelming. Women shared their own stories in return, creating a circle of trust and healing that spread throughout the community. When Adelaide was 42 and Daniel 47, they became grandparents for the first time. Henry married a sweet young woman named Mary, and they had a baby girl they named Adelaide after her grandmother. Holding her tiny namesake in her arms, Adelaide felt the circle of life complete itself. She had been given a second chance, and now her legacy would continue through her children and their children. Emma followed a few years later, marrying a teacher from Tucson and moving there to open a school for girls. Adelaide was sad to see her daughter move away, but proud of the woman she had become. The twins remained on the ranch, working alongside Daniel and eventually taking over more of the daily operations. As Daniel and Adelaide moved into their 50s, they began to slow down, letting the younger generation take the lead. They still worked, but their days were filled more with advising than doing. They spent long evenings on the porch, watching the sun set over land that had witnessed their entire journey together. One evening, when the sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, Adelaide turned to Daniel and said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "Do you remember that first night when you offered to help me? You said the measure of a person is not in what they do when everyone is watching, but what they do when no one would know." "I remember. You measured true, Daniel Easton. You have been a good man every day of our life together, whether anyone was watching or not. You saved my life that night, but more than that, you gave me a reason to live." Daniel's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You saved me too, Adelaide. This house was just a building before you came. You made it a home. You gave me a family and a purpose beyond just surviving. We saved each other." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and the stars emerged. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, their sons and daughters-in-law, their grandchildren visiting for the evening. The house was full of life and love and laughter, exactly as it should be. Adelaide thought back to that terrified girl running through the desert with bleeding feet and no hope. She thought about all the moments of choice that had brought her from that desperate night to this peaceful evening. The choice to accept Daniel's help. The choice to stay. The choice to love. The choice to build a life instead of just surviving. Every choice had led her here, to this moment, to this life, to this love. "I would do it all again," she said softly. "Every hard moment, every struggle, every fear, because it all led me to you." Daniel pulled her close, and they sat together watching the stars, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and built a light bright enough to guide generations to come. The years continued their inevitable march. Grandchildren grew and had children of their own. The ranch evolved with the times, adding new techniques and technology while holding on to the values that Daniel and Adelaide had instilled. Their sons proved to be capable managers, building on the foundation their parents had laid. Daniel and Adelaide grew old together gracefully, their bodies slowing but their love never wavering. On their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, they renewed their vows in a simple ceremony in their yard. Adelaide wore a dress Emma had made for her, and Daniel wore his best suit, and they promised each other forever one more time. "I love you," Daniel said, his voice still strong despite his years. "From the moment I found you to this moment right now, loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." "And I love you," Adelaide replied, tears streaming down her lined face. "You were my rescuer, my friend, my partner, my family. You are the best man I have ever known." They lived to see their grandchildren marry and start families of their own. They lived to see the turn of the century, marveling at how much the world had changed. They lived to see their great-grandchildren running through the same fields where Adelaide had once run in fear, but now running in joy and freedom. Adelaide passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73, with Daniel holding her hand. She died as she had lived the last 55 years of her life, surrounded by love and family, safe and cherished and free. Daniel lived for 2 more years, cared for by his children and surrounded by the family he and Adelaide had built together. He spent his days telling stories of Adelaide to the younger generations, making sure they knew the remarkable woman she had been. He kept the wooden meadowlark he had carved for her on his bedside table, a reminder of their journey together. On a warm evening in May, Daniel passed away in his sleep, and the family liked to believe that Adelaide had come to take him home, just as he had taken her home that night so many years ago. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their graves marked with simple headstones that read, "Daniel Easton, beloved husband, father, grandfather, a good man, Adelaide Easton, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she found freedom and gave love." The ranch continued under their children's stewardship, then their grandchildren's. The story of Daniel and Adelaide became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. Their great-great-grandchildren would stand at their graves and hear the tale of how one man's compassion and one woman's courage created a legacy of love that endured through time. The house still stood, expanded and modernized, but still recognizably the same building where Adelaide had first found safety. The porch where they had sat together countless evenings remained, and family members still gathered there to watch the sunset over the Arizona desert. In the end, Adelaide and Daniel's story was not about escape or rescue, though it began that way. It was about the transformative power of love, about 2 broken people becoming whole together. It was about the family you choose and the home you build. It was about courage and compassion, about second chances and new beginnings. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West but transcending time and place. A story of hope that darkness can give way to light, that cruelty can be overcome by kindness, that one moment of compassion can change not just one life, but generations of lives to come. And somewhere in the stars above the Arizona desert, perhaps Daniel and Adelaide were together still, watching over the family they had created, the legacy they had built, the love that would never die. Their story had ended, but its impact would ripple forward through time, a testament to the enduring power of love, courage, and the simple choice to help someone in need. That was their gift to the world, the true measure of their lives. Not the land they accumulated or the children they raised, important as those were, but the example they set. The proof that love could heal even the deepest wounds. The evidence that goodness existed, that second chances were possible. That family was not just about blood but about who chose to stand by you when you needed them most. Their story was complete, and it was beautiful.